Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, one and all. This is the Smoking Barrel. I'm Rustin Edwards, based in Geneva, with my illustrious co-host, Mr. Matt Stanley, in Dubai. And we'd like to
Hello.
welcome you to a special edition of the Smoking Barrel because this is a twofer this week.
I know. It's like London buses. No, it's not that bad. But I mean, it is. I mean, I feel like we could have done one a day. But got to keep people on their toes. Got to keep the viewing public on their toes. Um, 19th of June, 22 minutes past one, $77 a barrel for Brent.
Yeah, Brett's been on a slow grind upward as everybody's waiting to see when the next shoe is going to drop in the Middle East. A lot of rhetoric being banted about, a lot of threats being banted about. And it's looking like things are just on a more ratcheted upward side for the tension and the possibility of an extended conflict.
Yep. I mean, look, this time last week, well, the 11th of June, Brent was at 66.47 a barrel.
Yeah.
And it wasn't like we were struggling for stuff to say, but things were pretty benign. So we're up $10.60 since that low on the 11th of June last Wednesday. That is a percentage of 15%, more or less, on the nose. Um, yeah, I mean, look, we picked up on Wednesday. The situation was very fluid. It still is, and I would argue that. I mean, they're still bombing each other, right? Missiles are being fired all the time, but it's not quite as shocking as it was a week ago. It's amazing how quickly news values get diminished. It's more that people are looking at, okay, well, what's the escalation going to look like? I just put a poll out on LinkedIn. Of course, I did. I'm a social media giant these days. I don't even know what FaceTube, whatever you kids call it these days. Anyway, enough about my ignorance. Yeah, just where the clearly things are going to get more clearly things are going to escalate, right? It's not like, and this is what I put in my commentary this morning, it's not like they're going to say, yeah, I'm done, like, oh, come on, let's go and have a cup of tea and talk about how we're going to sign a peace deal. Nah, it's the next move is only more escalation. And look, the word that's on lots of people's lips is, what do the US do? I mean,
Well,
I want
I think there's what you see in the news media, which shows a lot of fist pounding. We will destroy from both sides of this conflict. And that's what they're always going to do to feed their support base.
to, yeah,
But you do have the undercurrent of things going on behind the scenes. You've got a meeting here in Geneva on Friday between the Iranian foreign minister's delegation and an EU delegation, with the US supposedly involved as well, but not directly because Iran and the US don't talk directly. There's been a lot of other interesting movements where Iranian delegations apparently flying into Oman for whatever reason they're flying into Oman for. Letters being passed to the Qatarians as well from the Iranian foreign minister. So, there is some back channel talks going on that aren't part of what we see here in front. So, yes, the missiles are flying, the bombs are dropping,
the
but,
rumors are flying around. Yeah, absolutely.
and say again?
Rumors flying around. That's all it is, really, isn't it?
Well, there are rumors as well about what's going to happen, and a lot of speculation.
As I said,
And
that Oman story you mentioned last night, I got this message. Fars news agency quoting the Iranian foreign minister. We deny the news reported by Reuters regarding the arrival of an Iranian negotiating delegation to Oman.
yes.
So, I mean, it's amazing, isn't it? How there was some shitty story this morning saying, I forgot what it was. I'm not going to name the name because I'll probably get, arrested. That Trump has decided that he's going to join in, and I was like, what? Like, this is huge. And then you actually clicked on the story, and it was like, but he hasn't made his final decision yet. I'm like, what are you doing? Like, it's so
And
the
that's all
well,
clickbait. I mean,
yeah.
it's clickbait. I mean, people are expecting Trump to attack at some point or to give the green to attack. There's still a lot of hoops that have to be jumped in order to make that happen because a lot of the U.S. military assets operate out of sovereign territory of other nations. And so to get the approval to attack another nation from somebody else's territory, you have to go through those diplomatic channels. You can't just flip the switch and say, "Hey, we're going,"
Yeah.
and screw you all. That doesn't work. So there is a lot of negotiating. It has to happen, and a lot of convincing it has to happen before any forward planning can be done. Can the U.S. strike from U.S. territory? Sure, they can. But that would be the most telegraphed strike ever in the world
Hang
because
on, hang on.
dollars to
What do you
donuts.
mean? What do you mean?
What do you mean? What do I mean?
So the US could strike Iran
Yes, they could
from
strike Iran from U.S. territory. They have long-range bombers. The B-2 stealth bomber can launch from its air base in Missouri and fly halfway around the world to deliver a payload of bombs. But again, that would probably be the most telegraphed attack because no doubt when if those planes started lifting off from Missouri, there will be news cameras there or people with their iPhone filming the sorties launching.
yeah.
Um, so they do have that capability, and that's probably an option that's sitting on the table. And if that happened, then you'd have basically 24 hours until the bombs would start dropping from a U.S. base.
I mean, look, I mean,
But nevertheless, I mean, and when you look at it from a whole scale of the chessboard, the pieces are in place. You've got two carrier battle groups that are in region now. You've got the bombers in Diego Garcia. You've got all the air refueling assets that have been moved into region as well.
yeah.
So all the pieces are there for a U.S. engagement. It just depends on how big the U.S. engagement will be and what would be the net response from Iran if there was a U.S. engagement.
Yeah, I mean, look, we were talking a couple of weeks ago about, oh, there might be a tariff deal and it might be worth $3 or $4 a barrel. And then I know I'm not laughing, Jesus. And now you're actually saying words like, well, the B-2 bombers can take off from Missouri and fly around. And it's like, what the, like, look, doesn't matter about you know, me stumbling over my words. Let me just show you this. So you can see this, right? This is our update on the Israeli and Iran conflict. I want to take my hat off to every single member of my research or the research team at Kepler. They have worked their arse off. The dynamic, the way that they've moved with market dynamics and how reactive they've been has been, and never knee jerk, measured. I really take my hat off to them with utmost respect. We put this out yesterday, and look, I'm reading this and I'm thinking. Is this? These are words that I'm reading. Look at this. Uh, where is it? The one that you mentioned here. Mossad agents within Iran have also used a system of drones to render ineffective Iranian air defense systems, which had already been shown to be adequate against US-made F-35s. That's a sentence that someone's writing who's an energy correspondent, right? It is mad. The option is available to the US if it so chooses, is what you were saying, after the White House moved both B-2 and B-52 bombers to Diego Garcia military base earlier this year. That's the one that the UK just sold to the US, isn't it?
I don't know. Did you ever say that was returned back to the Mauritanians, I believe,
Return. That's right. Yeah, yeah. The
or
US
is she?
also, yeah, the US also has access to the Vincent Carrier Strike Group located offshore Oman, and is moving the Nimitz CSG into the region. I mean, I, I mean, yeah, I don't know what to say about that, but Marine Traffic is a company we acquired a few years ago. They're now being bought in under the Kepler brand, and we actually can track military vessels. What do you call it? The Navy or whatever you call it, the Air Force, blah blah blah. But of course, as soon as they go in the region, the AIS are turned off. So it's not like we can sort of go, we know where it is, because then everyone else could find out where it is. But I mean, look, this is kind of where we are, and the reason that me and you have this podcast is to try and make semblance of order out of what is fairly chaotic in energy markets. I'm not a politician, certainly. You obviously understand a lot more about the workings of the White House, etc. But look, what the feedback from our episode on Monday, which we had, was the Straits of Hormuz, and people really appreciated your counsel, your clarity that you'd been there, you'd navigated through that many times when you were at sea, etc. I want to go back to it, right? I want to go back to it, if I may, and just go over that again because let me share the map because we spoke before we came on today. We spoke. You mentioned again about the word that everyone's banding around is the Straits of Hormuz are going to be shut, and it is a concern. Whether it's a far-fetched one, get it. But from a practical point of view, you can give us some context on just how bloody difficult that really is. Let me zoom in, and I want to just labour what we went through on Monday again. But before we do that, one second, Rustin, I shall let you speak in but a moment. This area here, right? I said to you the other day, this area here. The collision that happened offshore Corfacan was after we aired on Monday, right?
Yes.
Right. Okay. So for the uninitiated, there was a collision between the front Eagle and the Adeline, um, which we have basically in this area here. Now, look, there's lots of conspiracy theories, and perhaps we should talk about that after. Let's stick with the Straits of Hormuz. But this area here, you tell me from Monday, does this look busier to you or about the same?
Well, to me, it looks about the same as we had on Monday,
Okay.
because ships are going in and ships are standing by, and ships are transiting the Straits of Hormuz. I mean, if you go up, um, there are ships that are moving.
Yeah. Yeah.
The
Yeah, this is a
VLCCs,
NAFTA cargo.
Panamax,
Yeah.
um, and what's
That's a
going in that?
that's um this is ballast. This one's loaded. That's a NAFTA cargo. Um yeah, we're trying to put together a sort of some metrics around if there's more traffic going in or sorry, less traffic going in, more traffic coming out. I mean, look, it's still
My
if I just
my
zoom
guess
out.
is that you're going to have less. You're going to have probably more measured traffic going in as vessels are maintaining an outside safer response and only going in once they know that the port's ready to receive them.
So
So you'll probably
what
see more ships hanging off in OPL, off Fujairah, waiting to go in, and then they'll get the signal, okay, come on in. Much like which was reported earlier this week around Qatar and the LNG exports,
right,
um, where Qatar is basically telling the ships to hold off outside the Gulf of Oman, and they will call them in when they're ready to have them come alongside the dock. So you're limiting your risk of having an incident alongside your dock by doing that
right.
if there is a full scale attack. And it's also helping the shipping companies limit their exposure because if you have all your ships sitting inside the Persian Gulf and then an event happens where Iran starts attacking vessels exiting or coming into the Persian Gulf, you don't have your assets stranded in a market that you can't monetize.
Yeah, do you know what? Because yeah, exactly. I was talking to a friend of mine who's a bunker trader in Fujairah, and I said, because in my mind, I would have thought that okay, well, people are going to stop probably in Fujairah, um, and bunker demand should pick up because like while I'm here, while I'm idle, I might as well pick up some bunkers. And he's seeing the opposite. He's actually seeing that people are cancelling orders. They're cancelling bunker stems, paying whatever fee, and they're actually moving out of the area and they're going into Oman. They're going into Sohar. So
Mm-hmm.
I think this is Sohar anchorage down here. You know, this is Oman, Fujairah, Corfacan OPL, the outside port limits. I'd probably agree. I don't think that that's a marked increase in traffic there, and
No.
there are still boats that are moving around. But there's a few more. We'd have to probably get a congestion, our vessel congestion down here. We'd probably have to run a report. But it's odd, isn't it? Because you never want to profit from
Well,
others' peril, but
it,
there is a business case here, isn't it?
and the other case that you have is that go back up to the OPL position if you could, please.
Yes, sir.
Um, to the as you look at the screen to the right, that's
Yes,
Iranian territory.
yes,
So even if you're sitting there, you're still under the threat of something being done to you if Iran decides to start attacking vessels.
right. You know, this is
Uh,
Just so on that, this is the Yask terminal, which bypasses the Straits of Hormuz.
Yeah,
So you
that's
can
their
see
new
it here.
export.
Yeah, that's pretty low. Look,
Yep.
if I click on that, 20% utilized that.
Now, I mean, so when you look at that, I mean that kind of brings up another point about there's a lot of talk about 20 million barrels a day that transits through the Straits of Hormuz, and that's at risk if there's an attack.
Yeah.
But some of the infrastructure that countries have built to bypass the strait, this being one of them, this gas oil terminal, that was only built 2 years ago, if I remember
I
correctly,
can't remember. Yeah, yeah. It's 1,000 kilometers
commissioned
of
2 years.
pipeline. Yeah.
And again, it's a way for them to bypass the Straits of Hormuz. You've got the ADNOC pipeline into Fujairah.
Yeah, that's
Um,
here. The ADCOP. Yeah, that's there.
yep.
You
And
see
then
that
you've
here.
got the Saudis pipeline into the Red Sea, into the Port of Yanbu as well.
Yeah, that's Petroline. That's seven. That's big. That's 700,000 barrels a day. That one. That's really just because there are still issues like OPEC in the market, but the Saudis. That's what the direct crude burn is, right? So that's all coming from Ras Tanura going west for direct crude burn for power stations in the Red Sea. So that's kind of that kind of absorbed that oil coming back from the Saudis. Anyway, go on with OPEC. So yesterday.
But
Uh,
if Iran was to do something to hinder exports out of the Persian Gulf, they also
yeah,
hinder themselves because you can't think that Iran's major exports Kharg Island,
yeah. Let me get
uh,
that. Yeah.
which is way up in the upper reaches of the Persian Gulf.
Yeah, bear with me. It's slow today. Slow, slow, slow. It is Thursday. Um, now, Carg is there.
Yeah,
Um, yeah, we're still seeing we're still seeing around 2.3 million barrels a day of production from Iran, and
yeah. Well,
it, it, it,
the,
it go on, sorry,
there
go on.
has been no shutdown of Iranian oil production as of yet. I mean, there has been no attack on Iranian oil infrastructure. um, outside of what I think is probably more debris falling on different things than actual missile strikes.
Yeah,
Uh, maybe I'm wrong, but it's just you're looking at the scope of some of the stuff that's been hit. Yeah, yes, there's been infrastructure that's been hit inside of Iran, but from my take on that, and I'm not no military expert, is that is support tankage to help the military inside Iran, not so much for exports out into the world, and also probably some civilian use as well.
yeah. I mean, look, Carg is basically a VLCC a day, right? That's
Yes.
what they're doing right now. So VLCC a day. There's no boats. These are I think like service boats for the island itself, and then the VLCCs are waiting further out, going in, loading, and then going again. That's kind of what they're doing. But yeah, look, just going back then. I mean, this thing is so. I said yesterday there are more moving parts to this market than there are when I stumbled into a Zumba workout class in for Weight Watchers, which got a few people thinking, not nicely. But just talking practically about the Straits of Hormuz. Then, so let's just because this is what a lot of people who so this is what amazes me about oil markets. Like when there's a strike in the UK and there's no petrol available at the pump, everyone's like, "Well, I need to know about petrol. How do I not know? I can't be this naive." And then suddenly everyone's an expert in the downstream sector of the UK. Then you've got this issue that's going on right now, and suddenly people are really interested about what the Straits of Hormuz is. Like, what is that? Well, I've never heard of this place. And then suddenly everyone's an expert. But it's 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 seeking clarity amid the chaos, right? And you tell us, right? So ship's still moving. People are a bit worried. Insurance premiums have gone massively through the roof, doubled that to go up through the Straits of Hormuz and load up in the northern Middle East Gulf. But you said the other day on Monday that there could be uh, practically the likelihood of Iran able to shut down the Straits of Hormuz. It's a far-fetched idea, right?
Well, it's a stretch of credibility. They can harass ships. They can attack drones onto ships. They can launch missiles at ships, but they can't effectively block transit through the straits. So they can make it expensive to go through the straits, which they've already done by causing insurance rates to go up and making companies pay through the nose to charter a ship to go into the straits. So if you're a ship
Yeah.
owner, you're going to extract a premium just to go into that region of the world because it's a high risk voyage. In the current light of things, it's a high risk voyage.
Yeah.
Um, back in the 1980s during the tanker war, where Iraq and Iran were actually shooting at tankers, um, that still didn't stop the flow of oil as much as they were trying to hurt each other's economies. What ended up happening is that countries reflagged their ships under the American flag, and the U.S. Navy became doing escort duty.
Right.
That didn't stop the missiles from firing because they still shot at ships, but it did limit the amount of ships that got attacked over time. And it never stopped the flow of oil. I mean, oil will still find a way because Iran could shut down the Straits of Hormuz and they've just shot themselves in the foot for their own oil revenue.
But
So,
that's it, isn't it? But I mean, yeah, I agree with you. But so okay. So let's not dismiss it because that's complacent and arrogant for us to look at even doing that. But let's put that on the back burner. That's highly unlikely. What is it then people are pricing in? What is the $10, 15% rise, $10 a barrel rise in the market? We're seeing right now that 75 seems to be the floor right now, if you like. If the Straits of Hormuz being shut down is highly unlikely, what is it people are pricing in?
I think people are still trying to price in a lack of Iranian oil in the market.
So it's the
Uh,
Iranian volume you think being taken
I
out of the
think I
market?
think that's what's really at risk if you think about it, because if there is a errant missile strike or bomb that hits the export facility on Kharg Island, or if it's not a direct hit, it's a missile that gets shot down, and famously, like in Ukraine or in Russia, the debris hits the island and causes a fire and an explosion with an empty tank.
So,
Okay, so
so you think that the targets? I mean, this I know you're not an Israeli part of the IDF, obviously, but you think that it's intentional? I mean, if Israel wanted to completely, annihilate Iran, they would just fire at Kharg Island, right? But it would completely disrupt the whole global economy.
well, it would cause a cascade effect, in my opinion. I mean, that's kind of like your risk. Is that okay? And this is where the Straits of Hormuz argument comes into play, is that if Iran loses the ability to export, then they will impact the ability of other countries to export. I mean, so it's kind of a transitive. If A equals B, then B equals C, then C goes back to A again. So that's why Israel, like it or lump it, they've been actually, I think, fairly diligent and not directly attacking Iranian oil infrastructure.
Hang on, but
Um,
but hang on. So the conspiracy in me, and look, this is just my opinion. I'm pissing around, all right? But doesn't that give license for the US to drill baby drill, and then everyone buys American oil?
well, I mean, that's all well and good. It would give you that, but you end
I'm
up
laughing
so
again, but it's not
increasing.
funny.
Well, but let's play that out. So if that happened, okay, US currently is producing 13.4 million. It might go up to 14.5 million. So you get another million and a half. It still dives in comparison to the, you know, 20 million barrels a day of oil that is removed from the market. And it's not so much the crude oil that we have to worry about, it's the refined products.
Yes.
Because the refined products are the ones that are really the main risk factor here, because that's where you've got major oil refineries inside the Persian Gulf whose model is to run local crude and export the products to the world.
Yeah.
Hence the reason why gas oil is currently at $772 a ton,
Yeah, which is
which
what, $106 a barrel.
$106 a barrel. So I mean, we're back to basically $30 gas cracks, which we had last time we saw these levels was during the initial foray of the Russian-Ukrainian war.
Let me give you some numbers on that. Let's talk about the Singapore. Let's talk about the low sulfur gas oil crack to Brent. Um, it's up 27% in the last week.
Yeah.
The heating oil crack, which is what they call diesel in the States, up 20%. The Singapore crack is up 21%. It's a linear move on diesel, isn't it? It's not. This is. You know what I mean. Yesterday with someone I can't say who, but based out of Europe, and there is genuine concern what it might mean. You know, we're not going to
Well,
talk
and
about the
you've
Fed because
already had a refinery. The Haifa refinery in Israel was hit by a missile and is shut down. The Ashdod refinery is also having operational issues. So Israel needs gas oil. They use a lot of gas oil,
yeah,
not only for utility, but also for their own transportation network and what have you. They're also
yeah.
fighting a war, so they need it for the military. So, that's a big shortfall all of a sudden that's in the Med, in the Eastern Med.
Let me show you that quick because this is important. Haifa, uh, obviously down. Come on, load. But look, just on the refined product supply in May, right? 179,000 barrels a day, 74,000 barrels a day of diesel, right? So the month of May, and everything but 60 KT was used domestically. Okay, 74,000 barrels times 31 times 7 point. Sorry, talk amongst yourselves. What did I say? 74,000
Yes.
times 31. 2.3 million barrels divided by 7.45. 308,000 tons of finished grade, 10 ppm, that's used domestically. 60 KT got exported somewhere. So 240,000 tons left. That's 6 MRs a month, right?
Or,
That's how people
or
look at it.
CC, if you talk about big ships.
Well, okay, fine. Yeah, it's a lot of diesel. It's a lot of finished grade diesel, and it does disrupt supply and demand balances excessively in the Eastern Med.
Well, and you throw on top of this not only the fact that you've got the refinery that's been hit, Ashdod refinery is not operational at the moment. You also have the shutdown of the natural gas fields that Israel
Yes.
had as well,
Yeah.
which has now impacted utility fuel into Jordan, utility fuels into Israel, Egypt.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and so you'll see that snowball as well. We've seen a massive spike in high sulfur fuel values. We've seen, the diesel values because again, these countries need fuel, Jordan and Egypt, and they're going to start and they're buying from the market.
Yeah. I mean, look, so you've got what have we got here? 480,000 tons of products. You can see the split down there. There's a lot of ferts, quite a bit of fuel oil, naphtha. You got yeah, it's this is more or less gone. Like you said, Ashkelon's down. Let me have a look actually. Let me do Israel in general. This is our fancy refineries tool. Like, comment, subscribe, and or get in touch with your friendly neighborhood Keplerian for more. What we got? Ashkelon, the Ashdod refinery, Paz Ashdod, the Haifa one down here. You can see this all right. Um, what have we got? Yeah, okay. Oh, yeah, all down. All down. I haven't got Ashkelon. We've got us working. But anyway, look. I mean, it's changing a lot, isn't it? And it's in terms of flows where it has to come from. But
But
diesel,
Ashton refinery might be working, but who's going to bring a port? If you look at the insurance rates to call on an Israeli port right now, they've gone up just as much as going through through the Persian Gulf.
yeah,
So it becomes more expensive to bring in feedstock to run those refineries.
yeah. I mean, and it's its neighbor was it northerly neighbor of Syria, Lebanon, and then Syria.
Yeah,
Um,
Lebanon and Syria are both in the north of Israel.
yeah,
Iraq and Jordan is into the east. Or no, no, Iraq doesn't have a direct border, but Jordan does. Um, you got Egypt to the south.
yeah, that's right. Um, Yeah, there's not much traffic around Israel at all in terms of marine traffic, vessels and stuff. Okay, look, back onto the diesel story. I mean, where does that go? How? I mean, I know that's a crystal ball question, but backwardation really strong, $22 a ton in the front. That was $10 on Monday. 13 for Augie Sepp. Oknov 12.25. I mean, where does that go? How a further escalation? Gas oil could easily be at $1,500 a ton again. It could double from here.
Well, it could easily go up a lot. I mean, it really depends. So you start hitting that marginal cost structure though, where people start saying, "Ooh, do I really need to run these trucks now?" So
Mm.
you'll start hitting demand at some point, where you'll
Mm.
start seeing demand destruction because it'll just get too expensive to run.
So does I mean I haven't looked at it, but this is kind of like this I can compare to Russia Ukraine because
Yes.
diesel becomes so expensive. People start buying coal again. And we had a look at what's happening with coal prices. Are they? I mean, is that a delta for a lot of people? I'm assuming it is. Let me have a look. Where are coal prices right now, mate?
Well,
But yeah, look,
if you look at the knock-on effect when you think of the global economy, I mean, you start talking about a massive inflationary event. This is a massive inflationary event.
yeah,
Um, and I'm only saying that because, okay, we had Jerome Powell yesterday talking about U.S. interest rates holding them pat. And if you think right now that, okay, we see $40 increase on gas oil in ARA, you've got a $25 equivalent increase in the United States when you look at the NYMEX heating oil contract.
yeah.
And so when you have that type of spike, and again, that impacts trucking, that impacts rail, and that impacts shipping, maritime shipping, especially now that we have the wonderful Mediterranean ecozone, which is increased gas oil demand across the maritime fleet.
Yeah.
So all those factors coming into play and this massive price spike that we have, it makes it where we're going to start seeing these extra costs start rolling into the cost of goods probably within the next 5 to 6 weeks.
And I think that's what Powers, during obviously interest rates held steady last night and Powers signaling inflation's still good, but the cost of tariffs hasn't fed down into the end user yet. You're talking like a 2 month lead time. And then this certainly, energy being a big part of the inflation basket. If we're up 15% just on crude, flat prices off is coming off now, we're negative on the day, but gas oil's certainly not. Gas oil's still up, what, 36, up $5 a barrel today, gas oil. So, so that and heating oil following suit. Those HOGO spreads are really sort of following each other. That heating oil gas oil spread. Yeah, I mean it, that's the one thing that I've mentioned when a few people have asked me for comment this week. Media outlets, traders, etc. Watch diesel. If gas oil starts to come off, then I think that that's a very good bellwether that the market sort of priced in just how much of an effect this. But like you say, it's it's clear, and I never know. I feel like I'm never finishing sentences at the moment. That's the problem. I mean, I've always had that problem, but right now, I feel like
Well, the thing is, you
I'm
might finish a thought, and within 5 minutes, that thought is not completely irrelevant because something else has changed.
right, exactly. And then I'm thinking, am I saying the right thing? It's like being. Ugh. Anyway, um, yeah, I, I wonder. Let's go back to what the US are going to do. The Donald was quoted yesterday. Was asked a question: Are you going to fire on Iran? He was like, well, "Of course, I'm not going to tell you that. I don't know. You don't know if I'm going to. You don't know if I'm not going to." What's you speaking to your family back in the States? What's the mood there? I mean, are people thinking this is a good thing? Is that they know what Donald's going to do or what?
Well, it's really, the U.S. and Iran have had a long negative history together. I mean, and so there is, it depends on who you talk to and how they feel about it. Do the American public like war? No, especially with the U.S.'s history of entanglements in the Middle East, Iraq and Afghanistan being the most recent one, and how that was all perceived with the exit strategy out of Afghanistan. Americans are not happy about getting involved in foreign wars.
Yeah,
Now, strategic strikes, dropping a few bombs, that plays better than saying we're going to go for regime change and put the First Marine Battalion on the shore in Carg Island and take over the country. I don't think that is in the cards. I think a military strike, yeah, that would be okay, and that probably be perceived okay by most Americans. Anything outside of that would be considered a bit of an overreach and an overstretch. And it kind of goes against what Trump campaigned on. We're not going to get involved in foreign wars, and yet here we are, 6 months into the presidency, and we're getting involved in a foreign war. Um,
Yeah. I mean, let me ask you another naive question. I know I've got lots of these, but when spoke about the Iraq War there, that there were weapons of mass destruction, and that's the reason that the UK and the US went in. No, it, are we in that grey territory again with why Israel have fired against Iran? They saw them as a threat, right? That's always been the case. But has there been anything that's that catalyst?
I mean, it's they've been, depending on how you want to look at it, Israel and Iran have been at loggerheads for the better part of 40 years, ever since the revolution in Iran.
Mm.
Iran has been sponsoring, terrorist activities, which have impacted both the American government as well as the Israeli country. They back certain terrorist regimes in different countries, which have attacked both American assets as well as Israeli assets and Israeli people. So it's a bit of a, is this a culmination of everything that started since October 7th? That's kind of how I look at this, is that the IEA report that came out a week ago, which now the IEA has come out today saying that, well, we saw no evidence of Iran building a nuclear weapon, which I think is a bit of a backpedaling, as the Iranians have said the IEA is culpable in all these attacks because of the report they gave out a week ago, which said that Iran was not forthcoming and Iran was doing a lot of sketchy things when it came to reporting the uranium.
So that was the trigger, was it? You think? You think that report kind of went, "Do you know what? We've got to do something now," because
Well, I think it was the main trigger, because as the U.S. had been trying to negotiate with Iran to get something on the table, you had the red lines of no more enrichment. Iran saying, "Oh no, we have to have the right to enrich as much as we please." And then you have the IAEA coming out and saying that, well, we see a lot of strange things happen when we do our inspections, and Iran has not been forthcoming as to why, we're finding nuclear material in places where nuclear material is not supposed to be.
Hmm.
And it's kind of like we're doing 1 + 1 + 1 + 1 equals 8.
Yeah, yeah. I
Because
mean, it's
and because everybody remembers Iraq, there was so much quote unquote evidence of weapons of mass destruction in Iraq that was never found.
yeah, right. Exactly. That's what I mean. It's
So,
yeah. Iran confirms being
is
European.
Iran enriching uranium? Yes, they are. Had they enriched above 60%? Yes, they have. Had they enriched enough to make a nuclear weapon? Who knows? Had they
Yeah,
built a nuclear weapon? Who knows?
yeah. I mean, anyway, look. I mean, this we're verging on politics here. We don't do that on the smoking barrel. People like, comment, subscribe. What we can talk about is what's happening in oil shipping. Right. Talk to me about shipping just briefly. BLCC rates. What you seen? Have we seen a surge? What have we seen? MRs in the.
Been a surge in VLCC rates, a surge in most tanker rates, to be honest, just because of the impact that this could have on tanker fleets. And plus, you get the premium for vessels going into the Middle East to load cargoes, regardless if it's crude oil, gasoline, naphtha, all the other products the Middle East refineries export. So, yes, there's been a spike in freight rates, which is kind of obvious.
Yeah.
Um, and so that's why you still see tankers going into the Persian Gulf to load. And we haven't seen ships ships are holding off because they don't want to be caught into a risk position. However, when they're called into berth, they'll go in and berth, load their cargoes, and leave.
Yeah, let me bring up what we've got freight. Okay, look. God, it's so difficult because there is a this electric interference against navigation systems is on the rise. Now, the collision that happened on Tuesday morning with the Adeline and the front Eagle, whether the Adeline was had an AIS off, I don't think so because we've got a track on it. This electrical interference, what is that? That sounds so James
Well,
Bond.
Typically, most of the ships in the world use GPS as their main navigational tool, and that GPS feeds into their radar, their ECDIS system, which is an electronic chart display, as well as other systems on board the ship, their black box, what have you.
Right.
And so typically what happens, especially when you have a war scenario where a lot of military equipment uses GPS as well, the um, countries can spoof or degrade the system, the signals that come in, so that you don't have an accurate fix as to where your vessel is. You might end up showing yourself being 2 or 3 miles away from where you actually are on the
Right.
globe, on the surface of the world. I mean, the
Okay.
one thing that GPS uses a triangulation method of a constellation of 26 satellites that are around the globe that are in geosynchronous orbits, and it uses the Doppler effect of the different um, satellites to triangulate a position on the Earth, and that's why you have so much accuracy with GPS versus the earlier edition sat nav, which used a singular satellite going around the Earth um, to fix your position on the Earth.
Okay, gotcha. All right, fine. So it's not all Ethan Hawke. It's actually a thing.
It's
Um,
actually a thing, and the U.S. military used to do this a lot, especially during the first Persian Gulf War. Basically, you go into the Persian Gulf, and your GPS track would have you in the middle of Oman.
well, we see it a lot, obviously, marine traffic guys, but I read it and I'm like, I just can't process it. It doesn't make sense to me. Anyway, look, okay, fine. Thanks for the color. Look at this spike here, TC20, LR2s from the Middle East Gulf to the UK or Europe, up
And these are
90%.
clean tankers, not dirty tankers, that are
Yeah.
moving predominantly gas oil and or naphtha gasolines.
Yeah, look, I mean, this is Matt wrote this, Matt, right? Clean freight rates also posted large increase in the last few days. R2 rates from Middle East Gulf to Japan up 90% to $6 a barrel, roughly. Instability in the Middle East endangers not only volumes from the Middle East Gulf, but also westbound flows from India, crushing hopes of a reinstation of flows via the Red Sea and the Bab el-Mandeb Strait.
Well, the only reason why you have crushing hopes on the Red Sea and Babylon Strait, Manab Strait, is that the Houthis are aligned with Iran.
Yeah.
And if Iran wants to squeeze shipping, then okay, they could tell the Houthis have at it.
Yeah, we said that on Monday, right? I mean, I think that is certainly a consideration. I mean, when the guys wrote their update yesterday, though, it was a couple of really good uh, insights here. Hang on. Both Hamas and Hezbollah are shadows of their former selves, the latter of which has long been viewed as the crown jewel of Iran's network of armed groups within the Middle East region. Aggressive US airstrikes in Yemen have also done much damage to the Houthis, who have worked to restrict passage through the Bab el-Mandeb Strait by firing rockets at vessels moving through the area. I mean, what a time to be alive. I mean, sorry for swearing, but it's, I've certainly never lived through anything like this. And, I remember the early 90s Gulf War, but nothing on this scale.
Well, I mean, it's people using their position in the world to impact what they want done politically. I
Yeah.
mean, Straits of Bab el-Mandeb have always been a concern. It was first a concern with Somali pirates, if you remember them back
Yeah.
in the day when they were
Yeah.
raiding ships, that they could easily do the same thing that the Houthis have done.
Captain
Uh,
Phillips,
the
great
Houthis
film.
the Houthis figured out that they could actually have a bigger soapbox to deal with because okay, Straits of Bab el-Mandeb's in their back door, their backyard, and
Yeah.
so it gives them a very easy place to play politics. And that's the concern that people have always had in the region.
Yeah. Well, look, I mean, second one this week. I'm sure we could do another one tomorrow, but look, let's keep it going. But $76.90 we are Brent, 10 cents down from where we were when we first started. Markets are in a wait and see mode, I would say. And I think that everyone's just got to keep their headlines. When Donald wakes up later on, all this rumors about was it Fordow or something, the nuclear site in Iran that apparently that's going to be
Yep,
the target.
the one that's deep under the mountain.
Yeah. So let's wait and see. At the moment, gas oil still on the tear. It's up another $5, up $40 now, $774.25 for a ton of gas oil in Europe. Freight's on a tear. Brent's steady. Dollar's okay because they kept. I mean, just keep looking at the screens, people. That's the only counsel we can offer, right?
Yep. And click like, comment, and subscribe.
Do that as well. Do that as well. Good to see you, mate. Let's obviously talk as we
Take
do all day
care
every
and
day.
be safe.
Yeah, all right. Ciao.